So it was a good summer vacation when fill in the blank. Summer vacation was a success. I'll start. When you can barely remember your work login upon return. I consider that a success when it comes to summer vacation, when it gives me pause. Wait a minute. What was my login exactly to gain entry into my work computer?
Are you going to go for the low-hanging fruit of Paul and technology, or should we just let it
you
slide?
can go right ahead.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. I thought maybe we'd ease into the personal insults,
That was me easing it.
But right off the top here on Cardinals Underground.
Do you really forget your login?
A little bit. A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. The whole, it's the whole multi-factor authentication login, 13 different characters and numerals and punctuation
Gotta be safe.
symbols.
Can't have anybody hacking Darren's mailbag.
Here's the thing with Darren and the password, I'm just going to guess. What's kind of a tell is never, if you're trying to hack into Darren's computer, use an exclamation point. Because
Darren doesn't use those.
He's anti-exclamation point. It's egregious in so many different ways. And it's outlandish and really unnecessary. But
Which is why you shouldn't use them.
No, you've been anti-exclamation point for too long. Honestly, we'd like to see you make strides in that area.
You know what? I won't.
Not at this point in your life.
No,
you will
I mean,
not. No, you won't.
And when you're a journalist, you're not. I mean, come on.
Well, Darren is back, unmistakably so, even though we hinted that maybe Roy Green would replace Darren at the end of the last Cardinals Underground. Great Roy Green, and it was a pleasure to talk ball with Roy once again. And we look forward to talking to Roy all season long because the season is right around the corner, is it not? And Danny, you said you were getting ready for the season. And by the way, no soft tissue injuries here on the podcast, okay? Go easy. We don't want any soft tissue injuries right out of the gate here. I'm thinking, Danny, since you're a fan of the Netflix series Receiver, or at least you've been following it, its title, what is the title exactly?
Receiver?
Okay. The title.
Wait, was that?
No, the title is kind of a trick question. The title last year was quarterback.
Yes.
Yes.
Who's going to be really innovative and come out with content like this where it's just labeled podcast? Maybe we should just title this
rebrand
podcast.
I thought he was going to say next year can we have punter?
Wow, that is. Let me tell you something.
Well, you know what? We're all about rebranding right now. Maybe podcast is the way to go.
The fact you haven't done an off-season feature on Blake Gillikin is that's to your own detriment, Darren. He's a highly entertaining interview, so you'll find out the hard way. You know it's the end of training camp when Darren gets around to doing the full-blown feature on the long snapper. That's always a sure sign that training camp is almost over, and punter's somewhere around in the last week as well.
Well, to be honest, I already did long snappers. That was before I left on vacation. So
all right.
So that's already out there on azcardinals.com if you so choose.
Yeah. See, that's a good sign, I think. It's a good sign because there wasn't a lot of extraneous drama to report on. It was all business in the offseason for the most part, was it not?
We've earned that.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Less change.
Yeah.
More better. You're right.
Better.
After the last couple of years, you're absolutely right.
It has been drama-free, relatively drama-free, has it not?
Yes,
real nice.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of that. So, we'll see how that translates to the field, but it makes for a better vacation.
Yeah. And by the way, the latest Cardinals flight plan has posted. It's first flight. It's via the Cardinals YouTube page. Okay, so you go to youtube.com/azcardinals. All about the rookies, all about the offseason from the draft, going out to a D-backs game. They went bowling, food banks, so you get to learn a lot about not only the players, but the personalities behind these guys. And a lot of these guys are going to be factored in just like last year and could get significant playing time. We'll get to that. But really the biggest source of offseason content here recently has been the social media accounts of one Kyler Murray, has it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels like he's made a genuine effort not only to link up with his teammates more often away from the facility, but then he's making sure everybody knows about it and posting it, which is okay with me because then we get to see a little bit of it, at least know that's going on, whether it was early in the season when they were actually just taking trips like we know we took the one to Oklahoma, or recently when they went to UCLA to do some working out and he posted for lack of a better term, a team photo of him and a bunch of his Cardinals teammates.
Where'd you go, Darren, by the way? Did you post any summer vacation photos, by the way?
Yeah, are you going to make a TikTok?
I don't know if I'm going to make a TikTok. I don't know if I posted some. My wife probably posted some.
Maybe some of from the hotel weight room. Did you post anything like, no?
No.
Darren had to get real far away from us.
No, we stayed, the hotel we were in Dublin didn't have an exercise room.
Now, is this Dublin, Ohio?
Yeah. Dublin, Ireland.
Ireland. Nice.
And didn't have an exercise room, and the rooms were pretty tight there. And so, yeah.
See, sometimes it's good to be a pencil neck, to be a fine, diminutive American. When you're in Europe and you're in a 300, 400, 800-year-old hotel room.
Also true.
Yes,
That is part of it.
Yes.
But we got to go to Ireland, and we got to go to Scotland and Edinburgh in Scotland, and it was a fine time. I did not miss work at all. No offense.
Did you drive? Because when the Cardinals made the London trip, and a couple of my buddies who are big Cardinals fans, and they made the trip just on their own, and they drove up to Scotland or whatever, and I'm like, wow, that's gutsy. I can't do it on the other side of the road.
We talked about it. We ended up not doing it. We ended up using, in Ireland, we basically used Dublin as a home base, and we took a couple of day trips to a couple of places, the Cliffs of Moher and that kind of thing. Scotland, we didn't drive either, but we were in Edinburgh. It was like we had like this really nice Verbo right in the middle of everything. In Scotland, Edinburgh is very walkable. Like everything that's really cool is like all within 2 miles of each other, so you can just walk everywhere. I think my wife figured it out over the 2 weeks. We walked like 101 miles.
Nice.
I doubt this is true, but for some reason, I'm envisioning the fact that like Ireland and Scotland like don't have a lot of tall people, and you're pretty tall. Like I'm just imagining you having to like duck walking into a pub or something. Am I right or wrong on that assumption?
I will say that the latter first. Like there were places I definitely had to duck. But if you're going to historical places, a lot of stuff is, especially in Edinburgh, was historical. So like when you're going in, this stuff was built a long time ago. So yeah, I'm having to duck. But it wasn't. There were plenty of tourists both places we were. So it's not like it was just natives and me walking around.
All right, Dani, any highlights from the summer vacation that you want to share that you didn't put on social media, but maybe you'll convey now?
I didn't do any big trips this offseason. I went home for about 3 weeks, which was fantastic. And similarly to Darren, I did not miss work, did not think about work. So that was real nice to get away. It was just really just time with family and friends and being home for so long, not having to be rushed. Lots of time with my adorable, scrumptious, perfect nephew, which is really my priority when I go home. And that's about it.
Was it hot in Dallas?
Yes.
Like
and
here? I mean, I know it's more humid, but like...
the humidity really makes a difference. The warmest it probably got was probably 104. And it's so interesting because I kept saying to my mom in the morning, we would sit out on the back patio and like she'd have her coffee and we'd sit out there till 10 in the morning in the shade. It was beautiful. Do it again at night. The only downside to being able to sit outside was the mosquitoes, which I hadn't really thought about. It's so nice not having them out here, but it was really nice to have a little break from the heat.
I'm not going to lie, like especially in Scotland, but Ireland too, we basically were in the high 50s to low 70s. And Scotland was mostly mid 60s, and there was rain, not hard rain, but like it would start to sprinkle for about 10 minutes, and I couldn't get enough of it because I kept looking at my app and looking at the temperature back here going, I'm okay with this right now. I'm
really proud of myself because I actually got in the water in Monterey Bay about 3 days after we were in Key West, where the water is warmer than Hawaii. It is ridiculously warm.
So you went swimming in Key West?
Key West, and then 3 days later, it was 50-something degrees, the water temperature in Monterey Bay, and I got dragged in by the kids. But, for the first time...
You're a good dad, though.
Thin Arizona blood, we made it happen. But we did walk around Miami for a couple of days before we set out on this cruise, and, I mean, it was in the 90s. I don't know what the humidity was. It wasn't good, but it's nothing compared to $1.16 in Arizona. So we were walking around. Locals were looking at us like we're nuts. We're like, shh. Saying nothing, bud. We're from Arizona. Are you kidding me? So that's the only time you can really flex that, when you go in other towns during the summer, right?
My favorite part about talking to you when you came back from your vacation was learning what your dog Cheeto was up to while you all were on your cruise.
So he went inner tubing on the Salt River.
By himself?
They took the dog handler / trainer, took him, put him on a tube and sent him down the Salt River.
10-pound chihuahua.
Did you have to pay extra for that?
So then I tried to get my 14-year-old on a surfboard. I said, if the dog can do it, why can't you get on a surfboard? Let's go. That wasn't.
He didn't do that.
Didn't really work out.
But you're a surfer.
So
you and Troy Nicholas.
that's right. So there we go. That's our segue somehow into the fact that, you know what, you're ready to talk football, and it's never quite a job when we're talking football.
No,
Let's get
not.
real.
No,
Okay.
it's not.
So back to that picture. We can maybe see some of your vacation pics if we go to your social media channels. If you were to look at Kyler Murray's picture of all the offensive weapons that he took, right? And that was in California, based on his social media.
I think they were at UCLA.
Yeah. Would there be a title or a takeaway from that picture? If you treated that as an inkblot test, what would you take away from that? Because I did have one thought immediately when I saw that. And you want it? Here we go. I'm going to rip this off from Torey Lovello. A connected team is a dangerous team. And he used that mantra all the way through the Major League Baseball playoffs en route to the World Series. And he threw, and as they advanced round after round, it got a little more colorful. And there are a few bleeps in there. A bleeping connected team is a bleeping dangerous team. Can we at least say that much? I don't know much, but I think I know this much. This Cardinals team is connected going into 2024.
I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. It all stems from the front office and the coaching staff empowering Kyler Murray to be who he is, be the type of leader he is. It goes back to the type of players and people this front office has brought in, either through the draft or free agency. And I think the third factor is the youth of this team. In the past, this has been a veteran-heavy team, and there are pros to that. A lot of those players, though, already have their trainers they like to go and work out with, or they've got family, and they've got other commitments that they're really spending their off seasons with. And I'm not saying that the players in the picture, the Cardinals, aren't prioritizing any of that. I just feel like it's a different feeling when it's so many young players wanting to get together and build that chemistry, and maybe not having as many other commitments or things that you're already set on in the off season, and you can really feel the youth and the energy and the different vibe and the fact that they're all wanting to spend time with each other and work out and get better. I mean, Michael Wilson said that's the reason he stayed in Arizona this offseason, was to strictly work with Kyler all offseason.
I do want to say, I know a couple people looked at the photo and then started wondering where a couple other offensive players were. I'm like, okay, come on, how about we embrace the fact that all these guys are together? People have other lives. They have other things to do. You don't know when they took that photo and what might be going on. If player X's, sister is getting married that weekend or something like that, you don't know. And it's not because they don't want to be part of it or because who knows what's going on in their lives. So I just think the number of players that he's getting together, the amount of times that he's done it through this offseason. I mean, there were times where he was doing it while the players were still at the facility, and then over the weekend they might spend a day together as well. So there was an extra day there. And let's not get it confused. This isn't unique to Kyler Murray or what the Cardinals are doing. A lot of quarterbacks do this with their players in the offseason. But I think it's necessary in a lot of ways, the way the league is now. And it was missing last year because Kyler couldn't do these things. So the fact that he's got a chance to do it, I just think regardless of anything else, how you want to interpret it, the fact that they're that much further ahead because he is able to do it this year and they are doing it, I think bodes well for this team.
And I think it's logical to rationalize that, he values it more. Anytime you lose something, maybe you tend to value that, whether it's the game itself, what it means to him. You talk about all ball, that has been Kyler Murray since basically age 5, whether it's been football or baseball. And then just having an offseason, maybe he valued that more because he didn't have that ability to create chemistry and cohesion with his offensive weapons a year ago. Drew Stanton has told us repeatedly, it's not media speak. It's for real, getting that chemistry with certain receivers, knowing where they want the ball, knowing what the timing is exactly out of a route in a league where you're not open by 3 feet or 3 yards, you're open by 3 inches. That sort of stuff matters.
This is also year 6 for Kyler. Maybe he's looking back and saying, you know what, let me look at everything start to finish in a calendar year of what is working and what isn't working. And maybe if he's thinking about chemistry, okay, maybe this is stuff he hasn't done at least as frequently in the past. We know in years past when Hollywood Brown was here, they would be with Antoine Wesley, that there would be a couple of guys who would still work out. Maybe this was really intentional for Kyler this offseason of what have I done in the past, what have I not done in the past, and what can help me in those areas. And maybe this was something he was really intentional about.
What's interesting, too, is you went into the break and James Conner had that big interview on Rich Eisen, and he said the locker room had been cleansed.
Yeah.
Will Hernandez went on Arizona Sports and said the Cardinals have weeded out that element that hadn't totally bought in. And he basically confirmed what Wolf has said over the years. Wolf's famous line that went viral on NFL Network a couple preseasons ago, that if you get enough dogs in the locker room, even the cats start barking. So if that's built internally, guys who show up, and Will Hernandez confirmed this, you have no choice but to buy in.
Yeah.
Or it's get out. And then it was interesting because Dennis Gardeck just last week talking to the media was asked about the difference between this year and year two, the head coach and the GM versus last year. And he started his answer by saying the culture is built. Now it's a matter of everyone falling in line, ... So I wonder, okay, what sort of stepping stone is that for this season? It's complete conjecture. But if you're going to be that team that goes from out of the playoffs to into the playoffs, and everybody now, every season since 1990, there's been at least 4 non-playoff teams that have then made the playoffs the next year. And the last 5 years, there's been either 6 or 7 every single year. So there is turnover every year in the playoff field. And I'm guessing, that is one critical element of it. D'Amico Ryans must have done that in Houston a year ago, right? And then the quarterback shall lead them, which brings us back to Kyler Murray, because once again, we can sit here and we go, okay, on paper, they might look good here, maybe they have a flaw there, but if you have that dude at quarterback, it's always amazing how a quarterback can mask a lot of other weaknesses. Kurt Warner did it all the way to the Super Bowl.
He did. And I think we've talked all along. I mean, there's nothing confusing about it. We can sit here and talk about what the rookie class might look like, what Marvin Harrison Jr. might do as a rookie, how they've rebuilt the defensive line, what the schemes might look like, on and on and on and on and on, how deep this running back class is, or running back room is. It starts with Kyler Murray. It doesn't end with him, but it starts with him. And it not only starts with him, but it goes, you get pretty deep into the ground before you start branching into the other routes. Because if he plays poorly, you're going to struggle. If he gets hurt, you're going to struggle. And it doesn't matter what the culture is and what the rest of it is. And, I love Wolf's quote, but the other quote that we've all heard a million times is it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and Joes.
Sure.
And
yep.
If Jimmy at quarterback doesn't get it done, it doesn't matter what the rest of this might look like.
So is this Cardinals offense underrated right now? Didn't Kyler put out a social media post and he said, bet the over, meaning don't underestimate us? And you look at what he has at his disposal now, Dani. What do you think? One of our last recordings of Cardinals Underground, I sat here with the list, the most underrated or sleeper teams, biggest sleeper teams in the NFL. Cardinals weren't on the list. They're so unknown and underrated and such a sleeper team, they can't even make the all-sleeper list.
I don't have a problem with that because this was a 4-win team. So I really feel like I can't sit here and blame a lot of the national media or outsiders who aren't in the weeds the way that we are or the fans are, because this was a 4-win team. Now, it was at a time, especially the second half of the season, a good-looking 4-win team. But as much as drafting someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. really does elevate this offense, a lot of it is the same. And I'm not sitting here saying I don't think that this is going to be a dynamic or a threatening offense, because that's not how I feel. I really do feel like they have laid the foundation in terms of what offensive coordinator Drew Petzing wants run and with Gannon and the players that are here. I just don't really feel strongly if the Cardinals aren't on any list, because at the end of the day, they're coming off a 4-win season.
One of the things I saw, there was a ranking of offensive lines, and they had the Cardinals at 30, I think.
30?
Yeah.
Wow.
And see, that's the thing. It's like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say, that I'm a super expert on offensive lines anyways, and I'm certainly can't begin to tell you what the Titans look like on the offensive line or the Saints, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So maybe it's not right for me to sit there and raise my eyebrow, but I feel like this offensive line is assuming they stay healthy, is in a decent place, especially with the way they play.
That narrative goes back at least 2 years, maybe 3. The Cardinals' issues are the offensive line. That has not been the case. Now, I've been fond of saying over the years, you show me a team with a bad O-line, I'll show you a bad team. But there are other ways you can have a poor record. That was not the reason the Cardinals were a 4-win team last year. It wasn't the O-line.
I don't think so. I mean, again, there was a lot of stuff that went into last year. I think last year Nick Rallis did an amazing job with the defense with what they had, but I think we all agreed going into the season, and I think it kind of played out, they just didn't have the personnel on defense. I think, all due respect to Joshua Dobbs, until Kyler came back, you were going to struggle. I mean, we just got through talking about how important the quarterback is. Joshua Dobbs should be a backup quarterback. He shouldn't be starting for half a season. So, I mean, there was a lot that went into it. And I look at what happened down the stretch and the way they were able to do things offensively. No, I would not say the offensive line was an issue.
I mean, if you have a top 5 run game, do you have a bad offensive line? If you are number 2 in the NFL in yards per carry, do you have a bad offensive line? Those don't seem to really gel, right? That's not feasible that you can lead the NFL in 20-plus yard runs from scrimmage and you have the 30th ranked offensive line. So, all right, let's take that and go from there. So if the Cardinals offense, dare we say, might be underrated, think about it. You had a top 5 run game, plus you've added a 1-2 punch in the run game if Trey Benson is that guy. You've added a stud blocking tight end, you think, in Tip Ryman. You have added a former first-round pick, 11th overall at right tackle in Jonah Williams, who actually fared better at right tackle by most of the analytics than he had his entire career at left tackle during his Cincinnati career. And then if you can find an answer at left guard, which I would say was the one liability last year on the offensive line, left guard. In my body count, I got 9 dudes competing for left guard at this point.
Are you one of them?
Yeah, I'm going to ignore that, Darren, because that seems to suggest that I'm remiss in me counting up the 9 guys. You want them? Here we go. Evan Brown, Isaiah Adams, Elijah Wilkinson, Tristan Colon, Dennis Daly, Marquise Hayes, Big Mo, Carter O'Donnell, Keith Ismail, and John Gaines. Danny, anything on the John Gaines update desk front?
No.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
Can we start the Twitter feed? Is John Gaines practicing?
Yes or no? I'll just tweet it every day.
And it'll be just yes or no every day.
Here's what we need to do. Everybody takes a left guard, and then we see how this goes through August. All right, I'm taking Marquise Hayes, Big Mo.
I'm surprised you're taking Marquise Hayes.
Danny obviously is taking John Gaines. Darren, it's your choice now of the
I'd be stupid.
7 remaining left guards. Who do you opt for?
I'd be stupid not to take Evan Brown, wouldn't I?
I feel like John Gaines is going to be your backup center. I never put him at left guard.
With all due respect to John Gaines, he needs to get on the field before he can do anything.
I'm not John Gaines. I'm not offended by you saying that.
Okay. So now that I distracted myself, if indeed you have a 1-2 punch at running back, if indeed you can at least have a feasible, serviceable left guard as opposed to last year, then you have Kyler Murray with the entire offseason, plus you've given him wide receiver 1. Best case scenario, you've given him Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase as a rookie. And then Michael Wilson takes that step. Greg Dortch, we got rave reviews. All of a sudden is that slot receiver you've been waiting to happen. Unlike Andy Isabella and Rondale Moore. Now, if Greg Dortch is that guy, okay, wait a minute. Maybe people are sleeping on this Cardinals offense. And if the defense is still a work in progress and they're still maturing and evolving over the first half of the season where you're trying to incorporate some young playmakers like Darius Robinson, Max Melton, etc., then maybe this offense can carry the Cardinals to a winning record.
It's impressive to me that you can go through every offensive position, and I don't think you could argue that the Cardinals haven't elevated in some sense of the word. I think if you go across the offensive line, moving Parrish from right to left and bringing in Jonah Williams, bringing in Evan Brown as your left guard, who is supposedly the strongest offensive lineman in the weight room.
By the way, if I missed something, was Evan Brown named the starting left guard? Because you guys are talking like Evan Brown's the dude.
Just the veteran.
And I don't. I guess for me, I think, and Danny, you can disagree. For me, it's more about like a process of elimination at this point.
Okay, you reverse engineered it.
I'm struggling. Like you mentioned, how much it was a struggle last year with the guys that were around. I mean, like, what new people did they bring in besides Evan Brown? And I'm just wondering if you thought the guys that were doing it last year were the guys, they probably wouldn't have brought in Evan Brown. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Also, all the fellow offensive linemen talking about him and going on trips with him just kind of makes it feel like the five of them
talking about how strong he is.
Right.
And
makes it feel like the five of them
Yeah.
have already connected.
Yeah, this was the world's strongest man competition. Magnus versus Evan Brown would win. There's no doubt about that. What about Isaiah Adams? Are we just writing off the third-round pick out of Illinois?
See, here's the thing about Isaiah Adams for me is I could see him starting there. I just don't know if I see him starting there in week one. Like,
Yep.
I don't, other than Marvin Harrison, maybe Max Melton, and maybe Darius Robinson, I don't know if I see rookies starting right out of the box with the way they have the roster constructed.
All right, so beyond the punter and the left guard competition in camp, what else are you guys looking forward to in particular once Cardinals camp commences?
For a position battle?
Anything, yeah. Position battle, maybe a particular player. By the way, the first open practice, Thursday, July 25th, if I'm seeing that correctly, just to let everyone know.
I mean, position battle's got to be cornerback.
There's a dozen corners on this roster right now. So Sean Murphy-Bunting, Garrett Williams, and then to be determined.
Well, right. I mean, to me, this is still Starling Thomas's starting position to lose, and what seems like it would be to Max Melton as your high draft pick. Anything can happen. I mean, we've seen that. Now, last year was a little bit of a different situation of front office and coaching staff changing and coming in kind of with what was already there for you and having to go in that route. So it's different in that sense. But I do expect to see a lot of competition at the cornerback and seeing a lot of different pairings out there for them to get a feel of what they like.
See, for me, it's not a battle. But if you're talking about what I'm looking forward to, because for multiple reasons, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, we didn't get to report on him during the offseason. And even if we would have, he was doing some stuff. Like, I want to say and he was far away from where we get to stand.
Yeah.
Whereas as the practices at State Farm Stadium, we're going to be a lot closer. We're going to get a lot better look at him. There's going to be plays being run. Like, I'm looking forward to just what that looks like.
The biggest headline in the offseason was the very last workout, and he was first in line in the receiver drills. Basically was the biggest headline we could report just based on the way the offseason went. So I would agree with that, no question. I mean, there are other things, though, that I'm looking forward to seeing, like, Tip Ryman in the tight end outside linebacker, competition,
outside.
Right? Full contact, full pads. Here we go. There will be blood. Let's see how he fares.
I do want to see kind of where Darius Robinson fits in, both in terms of how they use him and where he is in the depth chart.
Yep.
I kind of want to see a faster pace with some pads on from Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones on that D-line.
Yep, sure.
I feel like that's going to be pretty nasty.
Well, wait, don't forget we're going to have to wait like 5 days before we get that.
And then LJ Collier, who we haven't seen since week one of last year. Supposedly.
We talk about the cornerback situation and how many. There's going to be a couple guys on the defensive line that are really fighting for, and there's going to be a name or two, a veteran. I don't know about a name, but a veteran or two that are not going to have a spot on that team, on that 53-man roster, maybe the practice squad, but they're not going to make the 53-man roster because there's just not going to be enough space.
I mean, they're a legit half dozen deep at defensive line. Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, LJ Collier, Darius Robinson, Roy Lopez, Dante Stills.
Kyrie's Tonga.
And Dante Stills might just be the Paulie Pigskin breakout player at camp. We'll see about that. I'm still weighing a few names here.
So
who are the training camp?
He definitely won the offseason, Dante
Stills. On the list, though, you had like 11 players last year.
I got a quick question on the rules of this. Like, do you have to announce this before report day? Like, when we record next week, which is technically report day, are you going to be able to announce that, or are you allowed to see a little bit of the early practices?
Well, it's varied. Based on the circumstances of that year, and whether I really needed to buy myself some more time or not, depending whether the sources have been able to report as of, and usually it's before the first full contact practice.
So you have like 4 or 5 days
so
then.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
What's the over-under of how many players are going to be on this list? Like over-under 11 players, Darren.
All right, so I'll tell you, Danny, you let me know what I should cap it at, okay? The Contenders.
All I want him to do is narrow
choice.
It down to 3 by the time we get to Indianapolis.
Yeah. Remember, it always ends up being one offense and one defense. All right,
That's true.
I don't need any other noise you guys generate. There will be one offense and one defense. Here's someone else I'm looking forward to seeing in person. I call him the man of mystery, Mack Wilson Sr.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Who is Mack Wilson?
He's kind of really been under the radar, hasn't he?
What is Mack Wilson, and where will Mack Wilson play? Kyle Vanden Bosch still talks about his pass rushing tape off the edge late last season for New England is legit.
When I interviewed Mack after he signed here early in the offseason, I had asked him about his ability to play all over. He just told me, I'm an athlete. I'm a football player. That's the position I play is I'm a football player. Okay.
He's a man. He's 40.
And him and forget that's a Mike Gundy reference for those who him and Kaiser White, just the before and after the Cardinals defense last year I did not like after Kaiser White suffered the season-ending injury. So
has the potential to be like another Buddha JT.
Sure.
That duo?
Yep. So, and then you know what? How many times did the Cardinals defense get victimized by the tight end or the running back and Mack Wilson in coverage? That's supposed to be a strong suit. The analytics and all the stats and him in coverage.
Are you telling us that you're rushing the passer or are you seeing coverage, Paul? Make up your mind.
Once again, man in mystery. How is Nick Rawls going to use him? If I was here for the press conference, that would have been my question. What is the role?
So the real training camp battle is actually going to be between defensive lineman Dante Stills and linebacker Mack Wilson to be the final defensive player on Paul's list.
Yeah, then again, if you want for the third level of the defense, the receivers were talking at the end of the offseason activities that Max Melton is a dude. Max Melton. So we'll see. I'm not so sure. I know you're on the Starling Thomas side, Danny, but I'll match and see you with Max Melton at this point.
To me, they're pretty even. I see this as Starling Thomas's position to lose. That's how I see it, as opposed to Melton just coming in and this is his position and start. Obviously everybody's fighting for their role and especially for a starting role at that. That's just how I see it. If you've got a player who was a starter last year, it's his to lose.
So you guys were forgetting about the one player that Dennis Gardeck identified at the end of his press conference last week.
I wasn't here for the press conference, so I wouldn't know that.
So at the very end, the question was, is there a player under the radar or a breakout player that you see really emerging in camp?
And then he said, I need a couple of days of practice to let you know.
Because he's actually in the room with this player and actually is around him on a daily basis all day long. He immediately named B.J. Ojulari. And followed by saying, and I quote, because I wrote it down right here, I think he's going to be a really special player, end quote, Dennis Gardeck on B.J. Ojulari. And I asked Kyle Vanden Bosch on the Red Sea Report this week, okay, considering you've played the position and you got after a quarterback for a living, can you tell early in a camp whether a B.J. Ojulari has truly taken that step and is ready to have a breakout season? He said to a certain degree. You always need game action. But he said to a certain degree, you can tell. How is his first step? How are some of his moves, his counter moves in the O-line, D-line? What sort of headache is he for the O-line just to keep up with his athleticism and his speed? And then, of course, Nick Rawls talking just last week about how he challenged B.J. Ojulari to be better against the run, to work on his pad level, setting the edge. He's put on 10 good pounds, according to B.J. himself. So intriguing. Because his college production, he was right behind. There was Will Anderson, and then there was B.J. Ojulari, and there was everyone else in that draft class. And we know what Will Anderson did a year ago for Houston. He didn't have a ton of sacks. He had only 7, but he had 67 pressures, which was among the league leaders, and he ended up in the Pro Bowl. If B.J. Ojulari could just be a factor, right? Just be a guy that an opposing offensive coordinator has to account for. If the Cardinals can just come up with that dude as a pass rusher, I think that would go such a long way for this defense.
And you got to hope the moves you made on the D-line are going to allow your pass rushers to really get after the quarterback, be a little more productive.
No doubt. So I'm trying to think what else you're looking forward to seeing. You coming out to an open practice,
Who's gonna fight? We know JG is a no fighting rule, so
right.
I think there's a chance we don't see any fights. At least maybe till Indy.
Okay, so Kyle Vandenbosch did say in an earlier edition of Red Sea Report when he heard about Tip Ryman, he said, yeah, me and him, there would be blows. There would be blood.
I could see that.
And I said, what, like how many times would you guys fight? Like 3 times? He said, in camp or every day? That was KVB's response. So,
did you ask Kyle about when Leonard Davis broke his finger on his helmet when they fought?
I did not.
I have a player, and we talk a lot about line of scrimmage, and I think I'm set on who my player might be.
Okay.
For your player for what? Your breakout player?
No. If someone's going to get into a little tussle.
Oh, got it. If you say Mo Hayes, you have to leave the podcast.
Absolutely not. That's Paul's player. Greg Dortch.
Oh.
Greg Dortch has got that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
His name's been in positive ways mentioned all off season.
Yep.
And I think really trying to step into this role and having a little fire in his gut. I can see him getting in a little tussle with maybe a Mack Wilson or something. I don't know yet.
I'm gonna go Will Hernandez versus Justin Jones. Justin Jones has a little bit of a. I mean, he's been great when he's talked to us, but you can tell there's a little there.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know Will Hernandez.
Oh yeah, Will Hernandez,
the refrigerator,
was a week into his first camp with the Cardinals, and he actually initiated a fight. Wait for it. With J.J. Watt.
Yes.
And I'll tweet out the video if I have to, because I do have the aftermath of that fight still on my phone. So, yeah.
I remember because Hernandez hit Watt, and Watt wasn't looking, and Watt went down, and Watt jumped up and took a run at him and hit him full speed, and Will Hernandez didn't move. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah. Well, Darius Robinson, remember his answer recently to the media was, have you had a welcome to the NFL moment yet? And his answer was, yes, the grip strength of Will Hernandez, which I've never quite heard before, to the point where he asked Will, like, okay, where do you get this ridiculous grip strength? And then Will said something about his dad worked construction. He used to help his dad as a kid. And it was sort of the old Jerry Rice, where his dad was a bricklayer and a mason, and they would work together in the summer, and his dad would drop bricks down to Jerry Rice. Yeah. And if you drop it, that costs us money. That's coming out of your paycheck. So Jerry Rice always attributed his hands to catching bricks.
If you remember the great Rodney Gunter.
Yeah, sure. Delaware State.
And they used to talk about how he was country strong. Will Hernandez is country strong. Like, I think he came out of the womb as the refrigerator.
I just let that hang for one moment there.
With all due respect to his mom.
Trey McBride has been a source of content, most recently in the Adam Schefter podcast, right, as of this week. And he had the comments about Marvin Harrison Jr. and just raving about him, and a guy his size shouldn't be able to run routes like that and have that sort of athleticism. So that's Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, who have given unbelievable glowing reviews of Marvin Harrison Jr., following up on Darren's answer that, hey, let's not bury the lead. We're in camp. Everyone's watching. Number 18.
Absolutely. It's going to be exciting to see. Again, we didn't really see much through this point in the offseason because you can't. There are rules for a reason and for player safety. So training camp, more so when it's those high days and they're in pads, that's going to be our first look. And I think it's going to be exciting.
Well, and let's also face it, too. I love Paris Johnson, but when he's your first-round pick, there's only so much you can go watch.
Right.
When he comes to training camp. Yeah. And, in the year before, the Cardinals didn't even have a first-round pick because of the Hollywood Brown. So, it's been a few years since you had, a skill guy who's, really going to do. I mean, I think we all watched. Well, we didn't all watch. When Isaiah Simmons was drafted, there was nobody at training camp because it was COVID. Zaven Collins isn't that really athletic freak that everybody was watching for. And then you had the Hollywood Bound trade. So, it also gives you, this first-round pick. You're like, oh, okay.
If you've been around football for a while, you realize the importance of the O-line. And when a team drafts an O-lineman in the first round, you applaud because you know how critical that is. You know who doesn't applaud? The social media team. Because it's very tough to post video of an offensive lineman. Oh, look at this pass set. Oh, look at this great tandem block. No, but if you have a Marvin Harrison Jr., guess what? Good video.
Or even Darius Robinson as a first-round pick, you're like, okay, you got to find him in the middle of that scrum right there. He made this great move.
Yeah.
From where we are, we can't really show it to you because there's bodies.
Speaking of Isaiah Simmons, have either of y'all watched Hard Knocks so far?
Oh,
I
I've
watched
not.
one episode.
Was he in it?
Well, it's with the Giants. No,
Right.
the only thing they had talked about, it was like literally a 2-second of where they're talking about, obviously building the team this offseason and where are we going to play Isaiah Simmons in the defense. And that was like literally, it was like one
Come
quick
on.
question.
Really?
It was in the first episode. I think there's,
People
I don't
are
know how
still
many are out
asking
right now,
that
2 or
question.
3. I've only watched the first one with the Giants. And I am kind of intrigued because I think the episode I haven't watched is out yet in terms of handling everything with Saquon.
So does that validate my nickname, Isaiah Simmons? Does that validate my nickname? Are
Sure
you
does.
ready to admit it at this point? By the way, this receiver Netflix series, Amon-Ra St. Brown is fluent in German and French.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
His mom is German, only spoke to her sons in German growing up so that they would be fluent, and he went to a French school. So he's fluent in 3 languages. And his dad was like
Wow.
Mr. Universe or something like 2 or 3 times, like an insane bodybuilder.
Okay.
Pretty
All right.
interesting
No,
stuff.
I can see why he got selected for the Netflix series. No doubt about that. Okay. All right. I'll throw out one more name that I'm looking forward to seeing in camp. Shouldn't be a story. I don't anticipate it to be a story.
But he's going to spark the flame right now.
Sean Murphy-Bunting. Only because the Tennessee Titans, the one conundrum I have, it's a little vexing, a little bit, is the Tennessee Titans needed corners. And they didn't retain Sean Murphy-Bunting. Cardinals really valued him. He's a JG guy. JG had him really highly rated, going back to when JG was coaching the position. I think the two of them are a similar mindset. He's definitely all ball. Nick Rawls told a funny story how Sean Murphy-Bunting is a dude who's in his office at 6 a.m. in the offseason. Get out of here. What are you doing? But I want to see it. I'm curious to see what he looks like, especially as that outside corner, because he really excelled as a nickel and slot corner in Tampa. And there's various reports as to how he played in Tennessee last year outside.
And I think it's a fair thing, although I think of, it's a little bit different of a situation, but I think of when you were talking about Mack Wilson, the same thing. Like, here's a guy that not a lot of people know about, played in a Belichick defense that did some things and people liked what he did, but it was nothing flashy. But maybe in this defense, everything changes because it's just a better fit.
Yep.
And I find it, we've talked about this before. Jonathan Gannon is a defensive backs guy. If there's any position that I really, not that I wouldn't trust him to like look at other positions and analyze other positions, if there's any position that I would be all in on Jonathan Gannon knowing what he's looking for, it's defensive back. And so if Sean Murphy-Bunting, he was that high on him, I have some confidence there.
And look, it's a position that we talk about pass rusher and just finding that guy. If you have cornerback 1, it's invaluable to any defensive coordinator. You can start every game plan with, okay, here's my top corner against your top receiver. Now, you might not have that against Buffalo in week 1 because who is their top receiver now after Stephon Diggs exited? But remember back in the days of Patrick Peterson?
Yes.
What a luxury. When he was at his all-pro best, to be able to put him against, whether it's Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, when he's winning Offensive Player of the Year, just to have that guy can really set the rest of the defense.
Are we sure that that's what they want Bunting to be?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe that exceeds, that's just an unrealistic expectation.
Like if they just think, okay, if we have, let's just say for argument's sake, Max Melton wins the other job. And you have Max Melton and Sean Murphy-Bunting, and we feel like we have 2 solid guys.
Right.
Maybe not a number 1 per se, but we have 2 solid guys.
But maybe you're not saying, hey, travel and shadow the number 1.
Yeah.
You're still playing a lot of zone.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I get it.
I mean, that's a guess.
Yeah. No, that's worthwhile. By the way, it's never too early to talk about Buffalo in week 1, just to let you know. Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator, after they fired Ken Dorsey the middle of last season, Joe Brady was elevated. He was the play caller, so now he's had his first offseason. He was on a podcast this past week just talking about his charge with Josh Allen was you don't have to play hero ball every snap. You make a lot of ridiculous plays that maybe only you can make in some ways, but you don't have to do that all the time. So my responsibility is to put an offense around you where when it happens, but you don't have to feel like you force it. And I was sort of reminded me a little bit of Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
And what Kyler Murray said recently, just about the difference with Drew Petzing, who he recently called a genius, versus the previous offense, and how too often they were looking at him to be the creator of everything.
See, I thought you were going to say it's never too early to think about next year's vacation.
All right, so it's a process for Darren to get out of vacation mode and ease into football mode. So
wait, did you end up getting logged into your computer?
Well, luckily I have two computers, so the second one is still I still need to scale that mountain at this point. So we'll make that happen.
No.
But there's a lot of change.
How are you gonna watch Flight Plan?
Danny, there's a lot of change. There's been a lot of change over the last year as we talked about, right? I mean, on the football side and beyond.
Yeah, well beyond.
So
when we record next week, we're just gonna be right on the precipice of training camp.
Yes.
Ooh.
So okay, all right. It's
I remember to bring blankets because where we record at the stadium for training camp is an ice box.
True. And we'll be able to see you in the blankets because we're going to continue the video.
That's right.
By the way, I'll leave you with a few things I learned while on vacation. You ready for this? I'll give you a rapid fire.
Got it.
I learned the meaning of the word biodynamic. It was at this farmer's market, kind of doubled as a bohemian hippie festival.
Where was this?
And this was in Santa Cruz, California, and they had a biodynamic herb stand. I promptly took a picture. That has nothing
to do with me.
And I sent it to Wolf. I said, "You meat and potatoes guy, what can I order you, Wolf, from the biodynamic herb stand?" So there was that. I also learned that Dr. Phil still has a show while I was on vacation. I saw that on one of the screens. I learned that they make a barbecue sauce that's infused with energy drink. Were you guys aware of this? Yeah.
Yikes.
Didn't really. We went out to the Everglades while in Florida. I learned that the Burmese python is now the king of the jungle in the Everglades. It's no longer the alligator, that they recently found a 19-foot Burmese python that had ingested a 5-foot alligator. I learned about that.
Florida just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. I learned that my 80-plus-year-old parents who still get the newspaper, every morning, you know what they do? They look at the weather page listing of all the top 50 countries, the old school weather page, and they have the high temperatures around the world. On a daily basis, they compare Phoenix to Baghdad, and they think it's entertaining.
That's cute.
And while we were there, Phoenix had topped Baghdad 9 out of 11 days in high temperature. In case you were scoring at home.
We're number one.
So there you go.
I would say that, and I kind of had an idea about this, but what I learned was when you're in Ireland and particularly Scotland from about, 1200 to 1650, that's a miserable ass existence. You were either trying not to die or trying not to get a disease or getting overthrown. Even if you were a power player, man, it was not a good thing.
And what Dennis Gardeck calls the separation season, right? The competition season in camp.
Yes.
The fight for 53. We'll just try and draw that analogy and leave it
that works for me.
Right there on this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.